All right, and we are live. Mr. GRON Farm, how are we doing this evening?
Very well. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I was working there for a minute longer than I wanted to, so feeling a little bit stressed, a little bit hey. But we're here, we're live, vertical and sober, so I think we're doing pretty good.
Hmm.
But very good. Hey, so I'm trying to think how I even passed you. I can't remember if it was in something on Rust Belt Kid or somehow I saw you posting somewhere on X, and I said,
Hmm.
"Huh,
Hmm.
this guy's." What it was I had made a comment on somebody. Again, I can't remember who the somebody was, but I had made a comment about rotational grazing and how I was
Hmm.
kicking
Hmm.
my butt there for a season. And I think he had tagged me on it or responded to it. So then we talked a little bit about that, little failures on my end, and then how it's been working for you. Then I realized everything you're doing up there with cattle and farming. So I said, hey, you want to jump on and just tell us about how you're stacking victories, man? What's going on? What are you doing up there in Illinois? Is it
Yes, yes. So North
okay?
Central Illinois, just about even between Peoria, the Quad Cities, and then we're two hours down the railroad from Chicago. It's kind of a it gets kind of a hairy drive up to Chicago, but so it's very. Uh, I would say it's a very retired part of the world. Back in high school, when someone would move in, the question was always like, "Why are you here?" So it's a lot more out migration than in for sure. And so it's my place is very fortunate. We're up on the farm is like as high on the landscape as it can be. The next place over north of our north road is running into a different watershed than our farm. So we don't have to worry about catching anything off anybody else's fields or any of that. It
Dig
is
into that a little bit if you would, because
uh,
a lot of the guys that listen to this show have no clue what you're talking about when you're talking about
sure.
catching water and worried about runoff.
Sure. And I had never really given it a huge amount of thought until I was up talking to the Natural Resource Conservation Service. They're very cautious about building ponds for doing equip grants to get people started on this rotational grazing stuff. They're very cautious about ponds on the theory that you're likely to catch. You're catching several acres worth of chemicals possibly from somebody else's operation. So they'll go a long way. They'll drill a really deep well before they'll pay for a pond, which just kind of surprised me. And um, particularly, I don't know. I was just kind of it kind of impressed me that much consideration had been done. Um, and so that was one of the advantages that my farm has being turned into, because we're converting out of corn and soybeans and converting to pasture, park, hardwood park, orchards, that kind of stuff. Because it is, I mean, all my pastures downhill right now of my subtenants soybeans, and we catch a lot of soil coming off the soybeans. So it's not ground that ought to be in corn and soybeans at all. So we're um, very anxious to get it out of corn and soybeans and into permanent pasture.
Yeah, so part of what he's digging into and what he's talking about there too, when he's talking about equip and he's talking about NRCS, is that
Sorry.
the U.S. Oh no, you're good. You're good. The USDA goes in and they have different sub programs under their umbrella. And for all our frustration with the federal government and the issues that they get bogged down in, there are actually a fair amount of programs within the USDA, especially the NRCS and EQUIP program, that are focused on, if not outright organic growing, they are focused on limited impact, low input, regenerative spaces. It's so that is one area in which I don't know if it was the hippies. I don't know if it was some sort of right wing initiative. I don't know where it came from, but under the USDA, if you poke and prod a little bit, you can find some interesting avenues. of funding, of guidance and wisdom and leadership and programs that you can get involved in. So that
Yes.
I just wanted to build a little bit on that. And then, so did you guys have it? Well, let's roll it back a little bit. Are you first generation farm? Are you third, fourth? How's all that working up there?
Yeah. So my folks got onto the farm. My people got onto the farm in 1902. They moved. The story is they moved in on the 1st of March, which was the traditional day, and the frost had just come out of the ground, and the wagon sank down into the ground up to the hubs. So we have like a
Here we
specific
go.
date.
This is it.
Yes. So anyway, that would have been my great great grandfather, I think. So I think that would be 5 generations. And they'd been in the area since the 1860s and 70s renting farms. They left Germany because partly they didn't think that the Army's reserve system was like good enough at the time, and everyone was running out of firewood in Germany. The population was getting high enough that all those and the lords owned all the forests, which was a very common arrangement. And that's actually where in English we get the phrase by hook or by crook, was that the tenants could go into the forest and limb the trees up with bill hooks and stuff and take that for firewood. Well, the population had been getting so high, there wasn't firewood to go around, and evidently coal was expensive. So they figured they'd move here, and they picked places where there was lots of forest, thinking that that was their conception of being rich. Being rich farmers was having forest around. So they picked places that were not down on the plains. Just 20 minutes south of us, it gets very flat and very, very square 80s and 160s to farm corn and soybeans on. So my people didn't pick that. They picked up on the ridges and cut back some, but there's still they left a certain number of, a certain amount of um, permanent timber that's just not, it was never accessible even with horses. And a lot of that got bigger once once they bought tractors in the 30s and 40s. Those permanent timbers kind of got bigger because the horses don't turn over nearly as easy on a hillside as a tractor does. And my grandfather put in a lot of conservation, put in a lot of walnut trees that are coming in very well now. 10 years ago, me and my father were, if we found a walnut tree in the yard or like out in the pasture, we'd put a big effort into moving it. And now 10 years on, there's so many walnut trees coming up that the squirrel population works so hard to plant them that we're really having to choose which walnut trees to get rid of, which is, it's kind of impressing on me how this part of the world, walnut trees are a crop tree. They're the best crop tree, and even they have a tendency once a population gets started to take over. And this part of the world is very much one where, if you don't farm something for 3 years, you turn your back and you turn around and there's a small forest which is impassable to wheeled vehicles, which is just not the case in other parts of the world. So around here, it's very much a trying to hold the forest back. And it's fortunate a lot of those weed trees are good, very good fence posts. Mulberry
Right.
trees, Osage orange, locust. Locust is probably the best weed
Osage
tree.
is
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
post
is. Its
wise.
habits are not. It
Right.
takes a certain amount of work to find a straight post out of hedge, but Osage
Okay,
orange. But
fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say there's that, and then boy, if you have cedar, but cedar tends to be a little bit south of y'all. So
yeah, we've got that tends to be interpreted as it doesn't grow very fast, and they're just they stay as little bushes, and they're kind
yes,
of you try to get rid of them, but
the Midwest for y'all listening, it's unbelievable how there are portions of the Midwest you will go there, and the dirt. When we're talking dirt, it's not dirt; it is legitimate soil. It's black, it's spongy, it's loamy, and things are going to grow. And that whole idea of deforestation or just keeping things back just so you can manage the fields, manage the pasture, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
good problem, but it's an issue.
Yes, yes. And I'm so we've got uh well, there's probably 20 acres altogether that I have to get dealt with, but a lot of underbrush has come up and gotten big and kind of is dying back. So I've got some help cutting that back, but all in between, the walnut trees are coming up, and they're,
Yes.
some of them are already 5-6 inches across, and so we're clearing this brush out, and there's this very beautiful park left over. Um,
Yes.
if you limb the walnut trees up, so it's going to look very nice in 5 years. My long-term goal is to have some kind of light ag tourism that is vaguely like Jane Austen themed,
Okay.
because that is the of course that doesn't come up in the Jane Austen books or the movies, but the pattern over in merry old England was, if you were a gentleman, you had your big house, which, there's different sizes of big house, but around the big house there was park, and that was cattle park, and the concept was you hired one of your tenants' kids or whatever to chase the cows around very slowly around the house, and it was kept, there was trees spaced out, which is what cattle really like, and in England, people have been cutting the brush back and the weeds for so long. Weeds don't really come up, so they don't have to have goats to keep stuff looking good. But you had this area around the house that you could have, your little statues or a fountain or a little outbuilding that did nothing and was just for show. And that was the very elegant situation to have your house
Well,
in, and you could take your guests out riding and stuff.
yeah. I'll tell
So
you,
that's what
managed
that's.
hedge.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just that's the long term aesthetic that I'm
Okay.
shooting for. So go ahead.
Sure. Well, I was just thinking managed hedgerows
Mm-hmm.
are unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But it's a labor issue. If somehow you can manage to have them and they can grow up, oh my goodness, they'll keep cattle, they'll keep everything in, and they're
Yes.
absolutely gorgeous to see. But the actual care and the labor to maintain a solid hedgerow is intense. So
Yes. Yes. I guess on the hedges around us, they figured on I can't even remember the term, but they'd cut the new sprouts over. They'd cut halfway
yep,
through and then lay them all down in the same direction. And they'd have to do that every other or every third year. And of
yep.
course, that was pretty tough work and thorny. So that was given up, pretty soon after barbed wire was available. But
Well, and
we've still
that's
got some.
I was thinking that's a whole stream in and of itself. Is the various, let's say the grazing management,
Mhm,
the livestock management. When the English folks came over here and were doing it, it was still hedgerows. I think it was George Washington that wrote about black locusts and just
mhm.
how good of a hedgerow it could be, and how it could be used in management. But that was the exact opposite of what the Spanish did. When the Spanish came over, they just dumped their horses, they dumped their cattle, and so that's where we get the piney woods. That's where we get the crackers. That's where we get the longhorns. A
Hmm.
completely different management style, turned into a completely different body type, and frankly a different temperament. And
Yes.
so once barbed wire came around, that's why now we're seeing Angus out west. There's still Beefmaster and folks mixing in, and trying to do different things. But boy, Angus is big all throughout the
Hmm.
country. And a big part of that is the barbed wire.
Yes.
And so it was able to manage and direct the cattle, easier than doing free range. Because the other part to that a lot of folks don't catch on to is those Spanish cattle, like Mustangs and like wild burros and BLM dealing with all that. The issues with those Spanish breeds is they are so hard on the fencing.
Oh
that
yes,
a
yeah,
lot of
I could
times
see that.
guys will move on to different ones. So now what are you into? Yeah, let's go that route for now. What breeds have you gotten into? Are you doing Angus? Are you doing Dexters? Are you doing
So
where are they at?
I've got a herd of British White, and those
Oh,
have been attested. They were in Britain, I guess. The literature I've read, they might have been brought over by the Romans, or they might have been native. I'm not positive, but I the cattle of that description, they're white bodies, black noses, black ears, black eyes, black feet, black switches sometimes, is like the breed standard. And then as they get darker, as an animal gets darker, they get speckles up on, on their nose and then on their shoulders. And the darkest ones just have a white dorsal stripe. So they look like great big Oreos. But they've been, I want to say they were semi-domesticated in the 1200s, where basically they just built walls around them in these big cattle parks, and they were managed basically as big deer. Um, and I'm not sure what the domestication history of them is really, but mine are extremely docile for beef animals. They're nearly as docile as like a Holstein. Um, and that's something I really like about them, because getting hurt, getting knocked over is expensive. um, really throws things off if you break a leg. So with managing them being easy is is
100%.
is a
You know,
quite a
I
blessing. So
got sick last year for about 6 weeks, and it hit
yeah,
us good.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So but they're very, so the woman I bought them out of Minnesota, um and the woman I bought them from had also, so the first thing I'd seen, so there's a guy next county over who's doing, he's doing regenerative agriculture, but he's not doing it on the same pattern I am. He's very much still into the regenerative agriculture. The point of it is to grow better corn, which seems kind of backward to me. But anyway, I'd been over and talked to his farm, and he's trying to spend a bunch of money, whereas I'm not trying to spend a bunch of money. But his farm manager was saying, "Well, we've never pulled a calf," and I was like, "Well, that's a that's a really good sign." So,
Yes.
um, so I went and happened to buy him from the same lady that this guy had bought from, and so now I can sell, when I'm done with a bull, I can sell them over to him, which is very handy. But bought them in, and they've done very well for, my man. I've still got a part-time job off the farm, and so my management is not hugely intensive. I don't do anything special in the fall to finish them, and I've always been impressed with how well they finish just on grass, and not being particularly
So
special about
you're
finishing them
grass
too.
fed and finish.
Yes, yes. Well, I
Okay.
can't really. So I haven't actually butchered anything for 3 years now, um, because the prices at the auction have been so good, and I have this part-time
Right.
job, and it's
Yes.
trying to manage the sales of packaged beef is a little bit daunting to me at the scale I'm at. It's not
Okay.
quite where I can, tell the boss, well, I'm not going to be here because I got to sell stuff.
Yep.
But we're getting there. This fall, I'm working with a guy down in Fairbury who's got a system. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I've just been selling my steers um, at the auction for crazy prices. But before that, like during COVID, I just had 4 steers, and I had made appointments for them in March, and then it came down to September, and they called me up. I had an appointment for the end of October, and the locker calls me up and says, "Well, we can't butcher these animals." I was like, "Well,
Yes.
thanks for telling me, 1 month out. So there's no way, could not find anyone to butcher them." So we butchered 2 of them ourselves. Well, had a neighbor help, old guy, who would just like, the animal just fell apart. He'd
Yep.
touch a joint with his knife, and it would just pop apart. It was like magic. And so my grandparents have this great big wooden walk-in cooler that we hung everything in, and we just packaged it all up ourselves. And but very impressed with how much fat was under the skin and around the heart and around the kidneys, for no special management at all. They just did that. So
Yep.
very impressed with these cattle altogether. Yeah, no, I've never had a case of pink eye yet. Never had to pull a calf. I did have I brought home this is like the first cow I had die, but I brought home some really nice hay that my boss needed to get rid of. And it was a big change. They had been eating some, this is in like February. They had been eating some fairly, not fancy hay at all. So anyway, they all get real excited about this hay, and this one cow manages to gorge herself enough that she got caught upside down in a very gentle depression. And it was, so they don't, because they're for anyone listening, the cows do not survive upside down if they can't get rolled over, because their guts fall
Yep.
up onto their lungs, and they just they suffocate. So if you're not there to see it, it happens really fast. So anyway, look back in my records. Of course, that was the most expensive cow I had bought.
Yes.
Naturally. So that's the only like real excitement that I've had. I've had very good luck. Very hardy animals. Had some very cold weather 2 Januaries ago. It was like -20 and it was like 40 miles an hour wind. And I'd fed them some nice hot silage, hay silage. So it was, really accessible calories, that's the important thing with cattle and keeping warm, is they have to have food in their stomachs to get that, the microbes, produce a lot of heat. But anyway, they just, it was really cold, brutal weather, and they just laid down all in a tight bunch, and, no ears, nothing got frostbite, so no tails. So I'm very impressed with these animals, if you can tell.
Yes. Well, good. So, what got you guys going? Because at one point you were in row crops, yes?
Yeah, well, so my dad actually gave up farming in 1997. He had been doing dairy and mixed agriculture, we never had a combine. So in a very not particularly scientific way. And at some point he decided, there's flies attacking me. At some point he decided that if he was going to borrow money to like try to make something happen, he'd rather go back to school. So he went and got a law degree. So
Oh, wow.
he sold off the dairy herd, but he kept 4 cows basically as, pets that we would occasionally have done into hamburger. And, he'd get a bull in every year, rent one, which was kind of a bad deal. Well, it wasn't a terrible deal, but like the bull always got fatter and we were paying for it to get fatter. But,
Oh, yeah.
so anyway, very, very, and then, so it's my grandfather's farm. So he was renting it out to a guy who was doing corn and soybeans, and, pretty okay guy, but he's like 83 now. So anyway, all through school, I had been very interested in farming, but there wasn't like an obvious pathway to start farming, because, trying to go out and buy used machinery that's like, hard to work on, or new machinery, which is impossible. It's not, corn and soybeans is just not open to a lot of entrants at all, even if you're like already in it. So that was always, I wanted to farm, but there wasn't a good pathway. And then once I think we've got a very good junior college nearby that has a very good ag program, but I was never in the ag program. I was trying to get stuff out of the way to go to the University of Illinois. But I was friends with the professor who is the ag chair now. So anyway, once I went to the U of I and then took a year off from the U of I, which I'm still taking a year off, he lent me Greg Judy's first book, I want to say.
Yeah, all right.
And Greg Judy was like, yeah, it's easy to make money doing this. Like, it's no big deal at all. Um,
So that's one of my frustrations with Greg Judy. I think his information is great, but he had a really nice setup where he could go and start leasing all those farms
yes,
and build those things in it, and that's great. And you need to take advantage of that if possible. But that is not what the average person is going to walk into.
yes, yes. And so I suppose I should caution everyone that my experience has an awful lot of advantages that are going to be very difficult to repeat. Um, so in that same way, so Greg Judy, um, and then I ordered his other book. I think I was actually still at the U of I when I got that second book. So, came back, uh, you know, I worked for, how was that? No, it must have been after the U of I. Anyway, came back. I worked for a year for a guy who sold Pioneer seed corn and is still like extremely. He's the most extreme version of like the corn and soybeans guy. Um,
Yeah.
all the
Super
equipment's new.
conventional.
Yes, everything totally conventional in the competition, the yield competitions, that kind of stuff. Um, so, and of course he's selling the seed corn, so like he has to.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so
it's a different
anyway,
world. Row cropping is a different world.
yes, and very much on the competition, like all these all these guys, they drive late model red pickups and they're very worried about if the neighbor has got his planter out in the spring,
Yeah, yeah.
and they like tease each other by like throwing the shed doors open so everyone can see, but they haven't actually pulled the planter out, all this stuff. So anyway, the the ag professor's fiance worked at this guy, back up, he got me a job at the elevator he's president of. He might still be president. And I worked at the elevator for 2 years. And that's when I got the Greg Judy books, and the ag professor, his fiance, worked at the elevator as well. And he actually got me that job with the corn guy. So anyway, the ag professor. Um, so I'm talking this over with like the boss there at the elevator, and I finally talked myself into it, and I go and I ask my granddad to co-sign a loan with Compeer, um, which I and my sister put together this whole proposal, and which was completely unnecessary. It was just a matter of asking, which is a big change from like growing up, because when growing up, if I asked for something, that was like the sure way to not get it. And
Yeah.
now that I'm an adult, just ask for things, not just parents and grandparents, like any, if you come off as a serious person, you could just ask for things and people just tend to go along with it, which is just such an odd change. So, got a loan from Compeer. I had approached the FSA about loans, and they were like very coy about offering any support for cattle at all. It was very
Yeah.
much, well, this is corn country, so that's all we know how to do. So,
Yeah.
but Compeer was very, they were very on board, and I got that loan at like 5%, and then the next year it went down. I redid it for 4%, so it was only $45,000, very small. Um, but they wanted, it's in the form of a mortgage on the farm, which is just a comically small amount of money to have a mortgage on. But that was like the easiest way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
At this point I could probably get the loan attached to the cattle. But
Right. I'll jump in real quick and say
go ahead.
I've done it. I've done it both ways. In that I have done the mortgage, and then the state I'm in. So you see Kentucky on my shirt,
Uh-huh.
but I can't say whether that's the state I'm in or not.
Okay.
I'll just say I've got family out that way. Anyways, the state I'm in, it was exactly what you said initially. It was this is this is something that we don't do, so we're going to have you finance, like you said, the whole second mortgage deal. A couple of years later, my sheep flock was big enough that I was able to go in and I was able to finance some fencing and some other issues on the property through the sheep.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now it's a matter of, yeah. And so exactly what you said. Now I go in once a year or whatever to the USDA office and check the loan, and how are your how are your sheep doing? Oh, they're doing fine.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, once you're able to get the ball rolling on something, it just that momentum sticks with you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
It's starting is the hardest issue. 100%.
yes. Yeah. And gosh, one of my favorite audiobooks is Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, and he talks in there about how the the second 100 pounds is a lot easier than the first 100 pounds, and how and it's just such an odd thing that I really feel like a lot of like younger people somehow, the capital accumulation was just never pushed, and kind of being in school is it's a very passive environment. You're
Yeah.
waiting it out, and it's I'm trying to I've got some neighbors who are homeschool kids who are just great employees. And I'm trying to
Good.
get them like going on, if you really want to farm, we can make that happen here in like 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
pretty easily. So I'm trying to invest in them in a way that like I feel like I should have been invested in previously. But um, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. I know. So Rust Belt and I, we've talked about it before that when you go and you see the child's herd of cattle and he's got a bull
hmm
out there and six cows or whatever,
hmm
that
hmm
is that's their college fund. That's their
hmm
down payment on their house. And so it's crazy. It's one of the getting land is probably the hardest part. And
Oh
so
yeah.
whether that's through lease, whether that's through actual buying it, once you have the land, the world's your oyster. I mean, that land is the canvas. And so you're focused on the grass, but then you could put out sheep, you could put out beef, you can. So where I'm at right now, depending on what exactly is going on, let's say you average about 295 to 310 a pound on beef right now.
hmm
And it's unbelievable. You do that over 10 cattle, and if you're averaging 1,000 pounds per, you're up already over $30,000. So
yeah. It's wild, and it's interesting. Cattle are kind of like the defining. They're kind of defining capital, because
yeah.
they they just generate. They double every other year. If you got the ground for them, uh,
Mm,
while while giving a dividend in the form of steers, which is just
yes.
very crazy to think of. And you're just, the land is all that wealth is like falling out of the sky, and the cattle are the way that you catch it. And it's very wild to think of. Um, and the sooner you can get started on that, the better, for sure.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, well,
I
and I
had a,
like how you phrase that because you build it up, and it can be treated the same as investing.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. So, and
Um,
it's the losses and everything are harder in the beginning. It's much
yeah,
harder if you have two cattle and you lose half your herd
yep.
than if you have 30 cattle and you lose a cow here, you lose a steer here.
Yes, and
So
that's
very
that's
different
something.
game.
Yes, I would, to anybody listening. I think I would suggest, uh, you know, it is good to dip your toes into things. If you got rabbits or chickens or whatever, but you definitely want to have a herd dynamic. Two goats, four cattle. When Dad had these four cattle, that was the worst number of cows, because each one can go a different direction when they get out. Um, they don't have, you can't. once you get up to 5 cows, then 2 of them have to pick one cardinal direction and then they all follow. Whereas herding 4 cows is very, very aggravating. Whereas like my 30, I've got 30 cows now, as well as, coming heifers and steers and stuff. And, they herd so nice, you get 2 of them going in the same direction and they all follow. So, that kind of stuff is very. I'm sitting by the side of the road here and someone's backing up. I don't know what the
Fair
deal
enough.
is. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But so what you do
I'm on the phone.
regenerative.
Yes.
You do regenerative, and you've already mentioned Greg Judy. Explain for folks listening, what does that mean? What's the emphasis in there? What are you trying to achieve versus standard cattle raising?
Yes. And there's a very good. I've been watching a kid over in, I think he's in Leicestershire. Anyways, over in England, and he just had a video about like what is regenerative, and the definitions get very funny. And I kind of concluded that what people mean by regenerative is anything that isn't just corn and soybeans, because it is. And I haven't read. I think Gabe Brown coined regenerative. I can't be sure. But I haven't read deeply enough into that to know what exactly other people's definitions of regenerative agriculture are. But my concept with the grazing is, and this is Greg Judy's as well, you're constantly the cattle are knocking down plant material, and the ideal is when you move them off of a piece of ground, they should have eaten a third of it, left a third of it standing, and knocked a third of it down. As a good ideal. But the concept there is that those by moving everything off the plants can recover over 30 days or 35 days, can recover really well. That's kind of what they're evolved to do. That's how a buffalo herd would have moved through and been very tightly packed and grazed and then moved on to avoid predators, and then the grass can
Yeah,
grow
and
back.
not grazed as deep as you would necessarily think. The
Yes.
big thinking in thirds is great. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. But I
Yeah.
did want to hit that. It's not as deep as a lot of folks would think.
Yes, and that's kind of that was when I went down to Greg Judy's grazing seminar. That was his thing, is like if you can just take off just a little bit off the top and then move them, that's even better. But kind of gets into like do you have enough ground to do that over? So anyway, if it's all in permanent pasture, you've got these perennials that are coming up again, putting on new growth 5 times a year. You're building a lot of root structure there, and there's all this litter developing, and so you're developing this mesh right on top of the soil that all the grass is growing up through, and you get this big sponge that all of a sudden can hold lots and lots of rainwater as it comes down. And so that's the base, and then as time goes on, it's degrading down into soil as new mesh is being developed above it. So that's my regenerative program. And then of course you introduce legume type trees like black locust, and they're doing the same thing at much higher, they can get farther down into the ground, and they're at another photo level. So they're doing the same thing where they're littering, they're not doing it 5 times a year, but if you're cutting them for timber, for posts, they're kind of doing the same thing over a longer term where, you cut a locust tree at head height for a post, and then you've got that locust tree starts growing back the next spring, very vigorously. And then of course it comes up from the roots, and you've got a whole thicket of locust trees there. So that's the base. That's my concept. I'm not my goal with regenerative agriculture is not to have higher corn yields.
Yeah.
I want everything in permanent pasture for the foreseeable future. Maybe pumpkin patch, that kind of, hedge, corn maze, the little stuff
Hmm.
like that, red corn or, something fancy. But
Well, and
uh,
I'll say too that I've got a couple market gardens out here, and so what'll happen is I will have the garden rows, and I'll end up using a biodegradable. I'll say polymer, but it's plastic. Is
mhm,
what it
mhm.
looks like. And so I'll run the rows in the biodegradable plastic. In between the rows, it's all cover crops because I want to
Yeah.
make sure that those rows are not bare. I've done that a few times, and that was
Mhm, mhm.
terrible, terrible. So now I end up doing it in cover crops. It's pulling the nitrogen down. It's when it rains, I don't have a big mud slick I'm working through. It's just better all, and so it takes a little bit extra labor. Yeah, it does to cut through those in betweens, but the whole idea and what we're talking about for everybody listening is just to continue to pour health into the soil rather
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
strip it. And so as you're always turning over, if you're not replenishing that health, you're not going to get anything. The soil's going to go dry. Now, conventionally, how people address that, because that's just a fact. Keep turning the soil over, and you don't add anything into it, you're going to strip that soil.
Yeah.
What people do conventionally to fix that is that they will go and they will have synthetic fertilizers, and they will just keep dumping synthetic fertilizer. What the whole regenerative idea is that we can manage it better by looking at the systems that have existed for thousands of years, for millions of years, however you set it up in your head, both on the animals and then on the light impact that people had for however many years through gardening, through even to some degree hunter gatherer thing, in that it's paying attention to what were flock movements, what was stocking rate.
Mhm.
Salatin talks about walking out there and, oh, there was 8 foot tall grass in Virginia. Guys talk about the Great Plains and how you couldn't even see anywhere
Yeah.
because there was so much grass. And so that's the real idea with regenerative, is how do we jump in there and sort of how work and synthesis with the with Mother Nature, with
Yes.
the
Yes.
soil, with the grass. Yep.
And I think a big change that has just come about, in the last 100 years, which doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think, is that in the past, we have conventional agriculture because grain stores really nice. Our ancestors were not doing this. They weren't doing a lot of plowing because they really loved it. They did it because grain stores. You can dig a hole that's got drainage, and you put a roof over it, and that grain will just stay there, for years. I think they dug up some wheat in an Egyptian tomb, and they got it to, it was 5,000 years old, and they got it to germinate, which is wild. So the reason we haven't had, animal agriculture has kind of been um, the fancy form of agriculture that you really couldn't scale because meat does not store nice, and it only stores nice, once you've got freezers and canning, which are, less than 150 years old. So that's the big change that needs to be taken advantage of. That we've got ways to store meat products that our ancestors just did not have, and um, once you've got that, you can transition a lot of ground that was in row crops into animal agriculture, which is a big help. Rather than putting a lot of energy and time into machinery, and turning the soil over, you can have the animals manage it and harvest them in a way that you just
Yeah.
couldn't in the past. I mean, in the past, the king's guards over in England were called the beef eaters because they were in the king's household, so they got beef like, every day. But everybody else, beef was like a Maybe you'd get some from your landlords, for Christmas or whatever, something special. Um, and
Are you
that's
familiar with Praise of Folly with
no,
Todd Lewis? Okay.
no,
He is. I'll send you a link to some of his stuff after this show. But
yeah,
he's been on here several times, and we were talking. Oh, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and one of his big emphases is energy. And
hmm,
so energy usage and the energy used to maintain a particular system. And it's exactly what you're saying. The only way outside of that meat storage is smoking, salting, all of which
right,
the amount of energy used to get to that point. And when we say energy, we're talking about the collection of the wood, the collection of the salt, the
yeah,
actual labor used to build the smoke, and so on. That's all going into this equation. And so, like you said, you can raise grain and you can store it, and a whole lot less calories, a whole lot less energy is used on that system. And so we're living in this sort of great time. There were the hunter gatherer people, but in a lot of ways they struggled to build anything permanent. And so
yeah,
even when you look at the Mongol invasion and all that, I mean, they got in there, yeah, they were eating meat, and arguably that's part of the reason they were able to do certain things in Asia, in Eurasia, but they couldn't keep it. There was nothing permanent there. And so I guess now I'm starting to ramble, but it's
no,
interesting when we start applying energy and what that means to how we're eating, what we're storing. And we do live in this great time, where not only do we have the root cellar, the literal root cellar where we can go down and store roots, but we also have the freezer and the refrigerator and this extended storage that, like you said, it makes keeping meat very, very conceivable for the vast majority
yeah,
of people. And then it also makes raising meat a very interesting proposition for those of us that are in a position to do it, because we can hold meat, and then we can sell it by the half, we could sell it by the whole, we could sell it by the cut. Almost I've got maybe out of all the sheep I'm butchering this year, I've got maybe one that'll go whole. And all my pork, I end up doing cuts, and everything else in lamb, it's all
hmm,
cuts. And that in and of itself can pay for nearly all of our operations here on the farm, just doing the meat by the
yeah,
cut. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
everything after that is gravy, and it's a fun time to be alive.
oh, certainly, yeah, yeah,
Yep, but very good. So we did that. We did Salatin. I don't know what else. The farm was, not to put too fine a point on it, but it was a little bit dead. It was a little bit dead. And then you said, "Hey, I want to bring it back." What else
yeah,
did we do?
yeah. To go back to my comments on Salin, who I really enjoy. Um, he,
I enjoy
I just,
him. I don't enjoy his followers. That's how I do.
oh really? I guess I haven't had enough of those interactions.
That's
That's
just
interesting.
that's just sweet. I think. Well, what it is that he's not a cult leader, but they turn him into one. And so Salatin's.
Interesting.
Have you ever listened to him speak? Have you ever got
Yeah.
he?
Well, go on.
He's super creative. He's super creative, and he's always about, like, well, how do we find a solution? Let's find a solution. And the amount of people I have talked that quote him like it's the Bible, and it's less about finding a solution, but emulating what he's done. It's like, come on, guys. He's
Interesting.
all about finding a solution. So that's my frustration with some of the folks that jump on the
Sure.
Salatin
Sure.
bandwagon.
I I get that's very. I'll have to be on the lookout for that now. That's very interesting. I listened to I just happened to be listening to You Can Farm, and I was kind of, which I think he wrote that 20 years ago already, but um I was very surprised. He's very adamant about not having like in town entertainments and stuff. You're like, the farm should be your like rest and relaxation, which very, very good points. I find, going out and mowing weeds with the scythe is like very, refreshing work. But I kind of got to thinking about, not having those social opportunities that like in town people have. He can say that because he already had found his wife when they were like 16. She made him a
I
suit.
thought that's where you were going to go. Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, so that's my only, but that's not really like a big part of his messaging. It's mostly like,
Yeah.
well, you can do this. So uh, I enjoy Joel Salatin. I think the last time I listened to him, he was on, Jordan Peterson, which was a very, very shallow, not shallow, but you know,
How did
for
Peterson
for the
even
un
handle that? I'm trying to.
he was pretty, because Jordan Peterson often interviews people and he does most of the talking, but he was pretty good about it. And that was just a
Yes.
few days after I happened to go see Jordan Peterson down in Peoria. But it was pretty good, and but you could tell he was asking questions from, he has no agricultural background at all, because
Yes.
uh, when Salatin goes into, well, we move the cows every day, I think, is his program. And Jordan's like, well, if you get like 5 times the productivity out of moving them every day, why doesn't everybody do that? And then he goes into like, well, and I can understand these animals weigh 1,000 pounds; they're hard to move, which is just a very funny city boy kind of understanding of a cow.
Yes.
Because when I move my cows, I used to pin the fence down, now I hold it up. But I have a horn I blow, and they know every time I blow the horn, that means there's more food in my direction. And it's the
Yes.
easiest thing in the world getting them to move to more food. So I
I
was
have
kind of
a
tickled by that.
I have a family member who is how would I word it? He is a very qualified engineer.
Okay.
Very qualified engineer, and he will come out here sometimes, and it's wonderful because whereas if we're up at their place or we're doing different things, he usually has an idea of what's going on and he has some input on things. And he will come out here and he has no clue what's going on. And he
Uh-huh.
says, where do you want me to jump in? How can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Never any snide remarks, never any comments. He is very much is so I mean that does speak to his character as well.
Yeah.
He's not a super arrogant guy, but he is a very capable person up until he gets out here, and then he's like, just put me where you need me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we covered Salatin, and we were on to the farm. What was your question about the farm again?
Oh, I think it was just it was kind of dead. You got
Yeah.
inspired. You started bringing it back. What else? What are little bits of wisdom that you would say? This is making it worth it, or this is something keep in the back of your mind. I know an example for me is don't let don't let off farm income be a dirty idea in your head
Sure. Sure.
because that is if you come out here, especially with no experience, and you think that the farm is going to be paying for itself in 2 years, in 3 years, potentially in 5 years, like you're out of your mind.
Sure. Yes.
So,
I guess my big overarching theme should be relationships. Because I've had a lot of building relationships, has been very advantageous, and I wish going through like school that I would have been a lot more focused on building relationships rather than building resumes. But like my off farm job is a guy 20 minutes south of me who's into, his big project is big square hay, and that's very convenient for me because now I don't have to try to make my own hay. I've got a guy that makes really good hay all the time, and if he does a lot of wrapped hay silage, and if like a mouse gets into this hay silage, we don't want to send it down to the road to like dairy people or horse people, so I get that. Huge advantage there. And also, like, after I got the job, I found out, well, we're fourth cousins too. Okay. So it would have been interesting to, if I would have gone through and, found all my fourth cousins in the two adjoining counties. I would have, when I was 16 or whatever, I would have made that relationship so many years earlier. Um, so all about relationships. I wouldn't have gotten Greg Judy's book if I wasn't real big friends with the uh, uh, the ag chair out at the college. And it's I do like one of Jordan Peterson's big things is, when you talk to people, act as if, talk to them as if they have something you want to find out, that, they know something that
Hmm.
you want to find out. And that's, very powerful stuff. Now, obviously, be social about it. Gosh, I look very dark. The sun is setting. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
relationships.
well, I
It's all
will
about
say
relationships.
yes, and it's huge. What he's hitting on, guys, is absolutely huge. He's been very good about plugging himself in with the local extension offices, with the different avenues of both wisdom and knowledge that he has access to, and that one, it's not going to happen overnight, especially if you're jumping into this and have no clue. That was me, so I will say it is possible. But the more you can build on the county extension office, on the USDA in particular, the equip, the NRCS, the different ag programs throughout the state, the more you can build on that, the let me think. Oh, does Illinois has a farm bureau? Yeah.
Yes, which I'm not very connected with. That's the one place I haven't been
Yes,
investing. Um, and I just don't.
which can be huge.
Yeah. I don't know how much of the Illinois Farm Bureau is focused on animal agriculture. And of course, I
Yep.
get Drover's magazine, but that's, and they're not. Drover's magazine isn't bad at all. They run regenerative ranching type articles pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Oh, here's one for you. How has the culture around you, the farms around you, the different farmers around you, how have they reacted to you shaking it up, doing the regenerative thing, or do you just kind of do it and not say anything? And
I don't go out of my way to talk about it,
yes,
because it's not and it's actually interestingly the young people. My cousin, is his dad has always been, very big corn and soybeans, and he's even kind of bad. He's not even doing like no-till and stuff anymore. He's doing um he's doing more and more tillage. But
oh yeah,
anyway, so that cousin will give me a hard time, and then we've got,
yes,
he's probably a third cousin across the road, and go to the same church and all this stuff. And he went out to dinner with them one time, and this kid who's like, 17, 18, is just really picking my brain about what like he's just acting flabbergasted that cattle can eat grass. And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was like, well, I mean, it seems to be working pretty okay. And part of the thing, I don't know, I've been kind of surprised, going to college and traveling a little bit. Evidently, I'm like, the culture around here is very much, if you talk something up too much, that you're probably lying. So like
yes.
being
Okay.
being too confident about something is not a way to sell it, which is interesting. Um, but with the older people, everyone seems pretty, like I say, the landscape like lends itself. Everyone knows that it's like highly erodible ground and probably
Yeah.
shouldn't be in corn and soybeans. And so like when I say, this is what we're doing and why, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Even
Yep.
even the old guys. So and now I'm starting to get comments. I'll have the older guys, because sometimes the cows are up by the road. They're up by the road for about a week, in the cycle,
Yeah.
and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, there's so many cows out there now!" And they're very impressed with the growth of the operation just from the road.
That's awesome.
Which is our place is happened to be one of like the two places in two farms in the township that were settled by Southerners. And the Southerners, they like putting all the buildings back in the middle of the farm. So we've got this really long lane. And so you can't really see what's going on. Like you can't see the farming operation from the road like everybody else's, everyone else's operations are very visible. And so now when the cows show up, I'll get these comments and people are impressed. So, and they look pretty, they usually look pretty good. And of course, when this time of year when the calves are out, gamboling around, it looks very bucolic, in a way that not very many operations in this part of the world look like that. People turn their Angus cows out on the corn stalks in the fall, or the winter. But besides that, you don't get to see people's animals. So people kind of like that they can see the animals.
Yeah,
So,
I'll
yeah.
say it's been my experience that uh, where I'm at, I have had people from California and Oregon and different parts of the state come in and say, "I'm going to do it this way," and been very loud about it. And
Yes, yes.
they have shot themselves in the foot. They have burnt bridges before they were even built, and because they were so locked into a system and didn't give any consideration to the guy who, rightly or wrongly, however we want to put it, has been on the same piece of property for 2, 3, 5 generations and doing something, making it work somehow, rather than it even acknowledging that, they came in and said, "Oh, you're doing it wrong."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is the quickest way to frankly make sure your enterprise fails, because nobody's ever going to help you. They're not going to tell anybody about you or anything else.
Yep. Yep.
Whereas, um, if you, and I think you kind of hit on this too, if you don't go in and say, "This is what I'm doing," but when you're asked, tell people what it is you're doing, that seems to work a whole lot better. And I've never had anybody, I've had some eyebrows raised at how I'm doing stuff, but then I've also had guys that would raise an eyebrow come in and, a few years later and say, "Well, huh, your grass is all right."
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Yeah, it's thank you. It's doing something."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's the other thing. I have had comments about how lush a pasture I've got. One of the pieces that's up on the road is like very good alfalfa, and
yes,
I've had comments about being surprised because another one of these things about the British white, they don't tend to bloat, which
okay,
I think I've never had anybody bloat yet, so um, I don't know. An Angus might, if you turned them out on that at the wrong time of year, the wrong time of day,
oh yeah,
that might not sit with them. But everyone comments about how lush the pasture is, and my pastures look a lot more. There's alfalfa that's like blooming, and it looks pretty, and everybody else's cattle pastures are, carpets that aren't carpets with weeds, and of course that's not.
splotchy. Yep,
Yes. Yeah. 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 So it looks. I mean, I don't like I say. I haven't gotten anybody besides the one cousin who's just a negative guy generally.
yeah,
I've never really gotten any bad comments, but it's also a pretty retired corner. Um,
yeah,
we don't not a huge amount of traffic down the road, and all the families have known each other for 100 years. So
yep.
it's not as if I'm going to be getting a lot of ornery comments real regular. It's not that kind of area. So I might not. Maybe people think but what I hear, from what I hear, it sounds pretty good. So
Good, good. Well, hey, I'm gonna pull up your website real quick for everybody.
sure.
Let's get this. Let's get this up here. So if you guys go to gronfarm.co, you're going to be able to jump in here. You're going to be able to see what's going on. There's a little bit of a story in there about how how all of it works. Now, anything people should know when they go to the website or anything?
Those prices haven't been updated. Send me an email
Okay.
if you're really interested. Send me an email.
Yeah.
So I need to go in there, and my sister put that website together. I took the photos. That's
Okay.
just photos.
Yes.
I was out four-wheeling around, and I think that website looks pretty slick. I'm very impressed with my
It
sister's
does. Is
work
she a
there.
web designer?
No. Well, she's I think she's done one website before, but she's not in the
Okay.
business of designing websites. So,
Sure. Well, very good. Yep. So you
so
guys can jump in there. You can see different things. How can they get a hold of you on X?
I'm GRON Farm Co, I think. And it's not like a big account or anything. I'll be sure to respond if you DM me. Give me follow. I'll follow you back probably if you got anything. If you've got a good looking X website or channel. What are they? What is your home your feed?
What is that? Is that a
Yeah,
profile? I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
profile, a profile.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest internet person. I'm okay.
Right.
I wouldn't say I'm a
Well,
professional anon at all, but
yeah. I have the if you jump into the description there on YouTube, I don't think it's going to pop up on X. Maybe it does. I'm not entirely sure how all that works. But on YouTube, the URL for your website is in there. Your X handle is on there, and then yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I want to thank you for your time, and I think we'll call it quits here in a second.
yeah, no one can see me anymore, so it's a good time to quit. But no, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been a very good conversation,
Yeah,
and
this
thanks
was
everybody for
awesome.
listening.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it.
Yep, you have a good evening.
You too.
Yep.